This is ChestertonRadio.com.
The Upper Room presents So You Want to Stay Married. Today's episode in this study of family life in the modern home is Those Whom God Has Joined Together, especially written and produced for the Upper Room by Carlton E. Morse, and features John McIntyre as the father, Peggy Weber as Barbara, and Sam Edwards as Tom. This very evening, Tom Grayson asked Barbara Lawton to marry him. It happened out in the grape arbor, with the moon full and warm and golden, and the sound of crickets and the smell of midsummer grasses and flowers in the air. All these blended with the perfume of their newfound happiness, making the night exquisitely radiant. And in the midst of it, Barbara looked through the arbor door and saw the light still burning in the living room window, and knew that her father was still in his favorite chair, reading.
Tom, listen.
You said it. I heard it with my own ears. I asked you to marry me, and you said you would.
Oh, I did.
Then put your lips up here again.
Tom, my dear.
Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it the most gorgeous thing that ever happened to two people? And this is just the beginning. Oh, just think of all the beautiful, wonderful, gorgeous years ahead.
Tom, let's go tell my father.
Sure, why not? Let's go tell the whole world. Let's go tell your father. Let's go tell your mother. Hey, wait a minute. You don't mean I have to go ask your father if I can marry you?
Oh, darling, no.
I should hope not. That'd scare me to death. Besides, you already
said...
said...
I just want Father to be the first one to know.
What about your mother?
She's already asleep. I'll tell her in the morning. Come on.
Wait.
Yes?
Just once more. Put your face up here.
Goodness. Girl practically has to stand on her tiptoes to reach a 6-footer.
A 6-footer like what?
Like you, darling.
Oh, honey, if we live to be 100, never will there be another moment like this.
Something we'll always remember.
Okay. Let's go tell your father. Come on.
Don't let the door bang shut. It'll wake Mother. Come on in.
That you, Barbara?
And Tom.
Well, Tom, aren't you keeping my daughter out pretty late?
Mr. Lawton,
What's the matter, Tom? Did you swallow something?
No, sir.
Father, what Tom's trying to say, if you'd let him, is that he's asked me to marry him, and I'm going to.
Is that so now?
With yours and Mrs. Lawson's approval. Well, that is, I mean...
Well, I think that's very handsome of you, Tom. There aren't many fathers who have the distinction of having been asked for their daughter's hand these days.
What I mean is that...
Yes, I think I know what you mean. Well, Barbara, I knew this day would come eventually. Frankly, though, it rather caught me unaware.
Darling, Tom will be so good to me, and we'll be so happy.
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, I think you two young people better sit down for a little. I think this is a very good time to say a few things.
You're not going to try to talk us out of getting married, are you?
No, Tom. No, I'm very much in favor of marriage. Here, sit on the arm of my chair, Barbara. Tom, you sit here on this footstool.
Yes, sir.
Good. Well, Barbara, as you know in your capacity as a daughter in the family, that there's been great love and affection between your mother and me.
Yes. And that's how I want Tom and me to be, too.
I know you do. And as he sits here full of the first excitement of your engagement, I know that's what Tom wants, too.
But we already have it, Mr. Lawton. We both feel the same way. Oh, we're probably the two best-suited people for each other that ever got married.
I'm glad you feel that way, Tom. But believe me, there's a great deal more to marriage than passionate eagerness, this burning desire which you feel at the moment.
Honestly, Barbara, I don't think he understands.
Oh, maybe you've forgotten, Father.
My dears, you don't forget anything as important as the beautiful moment when the girl you love consents to your proposal. No, that lives with a man. But that's part of the perfume, the fragrance of marriage. The substance of marriage is something else.
The substance of marriage?
There are the things about marriage that keep it alive, make it work. The real function of marriage that makes it necessary to men and women. In other words, the inner needs in all of us which make the husband-wife relationship the most important of all relationships.
You know what he's talking about, Barbara?
I don't think so.
Well, there are certain human relations which belong only to a husband and wife. And if these elements are understood and practiced in the home, they bind a marriage into a beautiful, cohesive force from within that nothing in the world can destroy.
You and Mother practice?
We do, indeed. And most of them you'll recognize when I tell you what they are. Now, first, let me preface what I'm going to say by repeating to you something you may already know. Every anxious or unpleasant emotion we feel in our lives, from cradle to grave, stems from fear. Fear causes suspicion. Fear causes hatred. Fear causes anxiety. Fear makes us selfish, dissatisfied, unkind. Fear makes us money grabbers, cheaters. Fear is the great destroyer, the chief enemy of mankind. Now, with that in mind, here are some of the wonderful things which a good marriage does for a man and woman. One, it satisfies that great human hunger for security.
You mean you fixed it so Mrs. Lawton doesn't have to worry about money?
Well, no, Tom, it isn't money. It's the security of your inner self. Now, when you were a little boy and you were frightened or hurt, you ran home crying, and your mother gathered you up in her arms, and you felt wonderfully soothed and safe. You ever have such an experience?
Yeah, sure.
Well, that's the security I mean. A man and wife have that sort of security in their marriage. We never get over the need of someone who cares personally and intimately. Someone to tell us that bad times are going to change to good times. That we're going to get well from our hurts. And no matter what happens, there are two of us to sink or swim together.
Are those the things you and Mother used to be saying to each other? Lying in bed in the dark during those depression days when you were out of work?
Yes, Barbara.
I used to wonder. I was little, but I remember I could hear your voices softly from my bed, and it made me feel warm and comfortable so that it was easy to go to sleep.
A man's feeling of security in a woman and a woman's sense of security in a man are sacred and precious, and all by themselves make marriage the greatest of all human relationships. And next, there's the need of all of us for affection. The human being is a naturally loving and affectionate animal. It's as natural to love and want to be loved as it is to breathe. And I'm not talking about romantic love, which too often drifts off into promiscuous love. Silly girls and boys who use this superficial surface affection as though it were pocket money to be lavished on anyone at hand are endangering their whole emotional lives. No, I'm talking about the affection that's planted in marriage and grows and becomes dearer and stronger with the years.
Mr. Lawton, I couldn't possibly love Barbara any more than I do now. I couldn't possibly. I haven't got room for it.
Well, you let Barbara lay your first child in your arms. Let her hold you in her arms some night when you've lost your job and you don't know where next week's food money's coming from. Let her renew your faith in yourself when all the world says you're finished. My boy, you don't even know the meaning of affection tonight. Well, what's the matter, Tom?
I just had a feeling like I was going down in an elevator fast.
Tom, you're white as a sheet.
But supposing we did have children, and I was to lose my job. Darling, I'm not very secure. Maybe you'd better not take a chance on
Tom.
me. Well, there are fellows around town whose fathers have money. Fellows you know.
Here. Move over.
But, Barbara, you don't...
You're the man I love, Tom.
But I never thought of what I might be getting you into until Mr. Lawton...
You think we can get ourselves into anything we can't somehow get ourselves out of?
You still want to take a chance on me?
You or no one.
Hey, I can do all right. What am I worried about? I got muscles and a brain. Why should I let my wife down?
You see how it works, Tom. Right in these few seconds, and without realizing what you were doing, you two demonstrated a number of the elements which go into a good marriage and tie a man and woman closer together. She gave you a feeling of security because she believes in you. You felt the affection in her attitude and words. Suddenly, your need for companionship is satisfied. Here you are, companions in the business of living, companions in working for the future.
But isn't that affection, Dad?
Yes, my dear, but there's a deeper element. You also can enjoy the companionship of a man or woman. It's an intellectual relationship, a meeting of the mind.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
Now, there's another inner need, inner longing, which all of us have at times, and which the husband and wife relationship satisfies perfectly, if it's functioning as it should. One of them's the need for recognition. In a business way, yes, we all like to be recognized as successes. But what I mean is something more fundamental. We all have a craving for recognition as individuals, as personalities. We all have a dread of being lost in the mass of humanity. We want to express ourselves, show what we are. It's a basic need in all of us, and most of us only get that recognition from an understanding husband or wife. I feel important to your mother, Barbara, and that's a great satisfaction to me. And I know that by recognizing her importance in my life, I give her added happiness. A man and wife have got to live in one another. That is marriage. And that's what I understand you, Tom, and you, Barbara, wish to enter into.
Oh. It's a lot more important than just saying I do at the altar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to reconsider?
Oh, no, sir.
You still want to be married?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it sounds great. I wouldn't miss it for anything.
It is great. A good marriage is truly made in heaven.
If the family ties are uncertain and giving way, family worship will help to strengthen them. Worship in the church of your choice and have daily devotions in your home. The church and the home are the basic rocks upon which the moral structure of this nation is built. They should be and must be one united foundation. Ask your pastor for devotional helps or send a postcard to The Upper Room, Nashville, Tennessee. Your announcer, Russell Thorson.
This is Chesterton Radio, your home for podcasts of works by G.K. Chesterton, plus drama, comedy, mystery, science fiction, big bands, and much more. The soundtrack to your Chesterton day at chestertonradio.com.
The Upper Room presents So You Want to Stay Married. Today's episode in this study of family life in the modern home is For Richer, For Poorer, For Better, For Worse. Especially written and produced for The Upper Room by Carlton E. Morse. Featuring Jeanette Nolan as Laura and John McIntyre as Fred, with Jane Morgan and Ken Christie. There is none so happy as two people closely tied together by a common goal ahead, and with a rich background of shared sacrifices, struggles, and memories. I'm thinking at the moment of Laura Montgomery, who married Fred Evans against her father's best judgment.
Yes, that was 20 years ago. I was 19 when I went to my father and said I was going to marry Fred.
Yes, I've known Fred since he was born, my dear. Fred's a good boy.
I think so, Dad.
But Fred hasn't got a cent to his name.
But hardly any young men in their 20s have money.
It doesn't seem to me Fred's tried very hard to accumulate anything. I've seen little sign of industry in that young man.
Oh, but you will.
You mean after you've married him?
Of course.
No girl ever reformed any young man by marrying him, Laura. That is a dreadful romantic fallacy which has got more girls into trouble.
But that's not it at all. I wouldn't be reforming him. It's just that he'll have an incentive.
But will he go right on living with his family? Only drag you into the mess, too.
Now, that's horrible. Of course not.
Well, my dear, you go talk to your mother.
And that's what I did that day 20 years ago. I went and talked to my mother. And it's just not going to make any difference, Mother. I'm in love with Fred, and he's in love with me.
Well, then, there's not very much use for me to say anything, is there?
Well, do you think I'm wrong?
If you're going to marry Fred Evans willy-nilly, then don't you think it would be tactless of me to say anything damaging against my future son-in-law?
Then you do feel the way Father does.
No, Laura. Every woman must follow the dictates of her heart. Your father may be more practical financially, but every woman knows that her happiness depends not on how much money her husband gives her, but how much he gives of himself. If you see in Fred all the good things you desire in a husband, then marry him, love him, cling to him. I don't know any other way for a woman to get the things she needs most out of life.
And so, 20 years ago last June, Laura Montgomery and Fred Evans walked down the aisle of our community church and gave our lives to one another. Fred had built our service station with his father's money, and we had rented a 5-room cottage just around the corner. We didn't go anywhere on our honeymoon because we were too eager to get started on our career. Besides, we didn't have the money. So Fred got into his overalls and went around the corner to the service station. And I did what was necessary in the cottage and tried to keep myself beautiful and exciting for Fred's coming at lunchtime and dinner. This lasted for a month. Then one evening, Fred seemed depressed all through dinner. Another piece of pie?
No, thanks.
More coffee?
I don't think so.
Darling, there's something dreadfully wrong. What's the matter? Is it me?
As though you could ask.
Well, it's something.
I don't know what to do about the service station.
Do about it?
Laura, I've just simply taken on a two-man's job, and I can't swing it.
You mean a service station can't be run by one man?
Well, actually, the station should be open from 6 in the morning until 9 at night. We open at 7 and close at 7.
But those 12 hours are too much. Look how tired you are now. Why, 3 more hours would kill you.
I couldn't do it.
You think we've made a mistake?
I don't know.
Well, could I be of any help?
My wife pump gasoline and wipe off windshields?
Well, what's wrong with pumping gas and wiping windshields?
I should say not.
But I want to. I'd love it.
You wouldn't love it after you were grease and grime up to your elbows.
I wouldn't love being out there with you all day instead of just seeing you at breakfast and lunch and dinner.
But what'll people say?
Well, what would they say if I let the station go bust just because I wouldn't help my husband out of a tight place? May I wear coveralls and a painter's cap to keep the grease out of my hair?
You'll hate it.
I love it. And I did love it. Without either one of us quite knowing why or how, a tiny strand that was not there before began to weave itself about our two hearts. It was made up of a shared experience, a mutual striving for achievement, the result of pitting our energies against misfortune. And that was the beginning of actually knowing that my father was wrong and my mother was right about my marriage. Well, at the first year and a half of our married life, Fred and I had paid something on the principal and interest against the service station, had all our current bills paid, and had $400 in the bank. More than that, we were looking forward to the arrival of... Well, Fred insisted it would be baby Laura. I knew in my heart it was Fred Jr. We had decided it was time I stopped working in the station, and on that evening we were driving over to my folks' house when suddenly out of a side street shot a cut-down roadster.
Laura! Laura, are you hurt? Laura, speak to me. Get her to the hospital. Get her to the hospital. Hurry! Hurry!
Yes, we lost the baby. And I spent 4 long, wearisome months in the hospital. Weary, bitter, endless months. Because not only had a careless boy in a miserable car killed our child, but he had wrecked our whole financial structure. The $400 melted like snow on the stove, and bills piled up, and Fred had to do without an extra man at the station. There just wasn't money to pay him. There were 4 or 5 months when we were two pretty sick and discouraged people. And we ended up the second year of our married life not one bit better than when we were married. In fact, with $200 in doctor bills more than when we started. But do you know, that was another big turning point in our married life. The day I came home from the hospital, Fred carried me in and laid me on the bed. And suddenly he began to cry. And I started to cry. And together we lay there, too full for words. Then we were praying together and finding comfort in each other. And out of it all, we got rid of something that had been building up in us since the accident. And when we were finished, there was a new shining silver cord about our hearts that had never been there before. It was a cord of tenderness and sweetness, forged out of common grief. There was something that we had shared together that no other person or persons would ever have a share in. A marital tie that surmounted romantic love or wealth or social position or anything else my father wanted for me and was afraid I would miss with Fred. And then, at the end of our 3rd year, our first son was born. And at the beginning of our 5th year, our second son was born. And then, in the 7th year, came the twins. 1 girl and 1 boy, and I was a very busy mother and wife. The 5-room cottage fairly bulged at the seams with 4 children, and it was quite necessary that I make all the children's clothes as well as my own. For at the end of 8 years, what with the children and the hospital bills and extra food and clothing, and the absolute necessity of a mechanic to help Fred in the station, we never again had saved up anywhere near as much as the $400 we saved the first year and a half. It was about the end of the 8th, or the beginning of the 9th, that we had a crisis about this very thing. It was evening, the children were abed.
Sit down for a minute, Laura.
Oh, I really shouldn't, Fred. There are so many things I can be doing while the children are asleep.
Poor darling.
Fred Evans, what are you talking about?
Trying so hard to be a good wife and mother and with absolutely nothing to do it with.
How can you talk like that?
Your father was right, wasn't he? Fred will never make any money, and Fred never has.
What's got into you? Are you tired of me?
Tired of you? Am I tired of my right arm? Am I tired of listening to my heart beat?
Well, then what is wrong?
You're such a good and gracious and wonderful girl and deserve so much from the world. And from me, you're getting so little.
Oh, Fred, how little you understand me.
What I do understand, I like world without end.
Well, do you think you could feel that way about me if I didn't feel that way about you? And you said something else that shows how very wrong you are. You said you try so hard to be a good wife and mother and have so little to do it with. Why, a good wife isn't the one who has money to spend. She's the one who has love to spend. High hopes for her family. The will and understanding to live in and for her husband. The desire to be one with her husband. And money and worldly goods and easy living have nothing whatever to do with a woman being a good wife and a good mother. Why, I can teach my children to believe in God. I can teach them honesty and integrity, the meaning of good citizenship without indulging them with costly playthings, can't I? Is it better for our children to understand the meaning of humanity, to know their duties toward themselves and their fellow men, and to know truth when they hear it? Or is it more important that they have a father with pockets full of money?
You wouldn't have anything different than it is?
I wouldn't trade 1 second of my life with you for a whole lifetime with anyone else under any circumstances of luxury.
I don't know why you feel like that. It's always been strange to me, but it's good. I know it's good because it makes me feel strong and capable and a man inside. I don't suppose we'll ever have much of glamour and worldly effects, my dear.
You are my choice of men. You are the one I want.
Such love can only lead a man to good.
And now 20 years have gone by. The 2 oldest boys are just finishing high school, and the twins are in their first year. Fred no longer has a helper at the service station because with the boys' help before and after school, he gets along very well. And as he said the other day, he would like to get the station finally paid for before he gets so old he has to turn it over to the boys. And we still live in the same little 5-room house. And we're very proud of our children, our integrity in the community. And deep within us is the knowledge that with the ebb and flow of fortune, we have built a good marriage. To us, it is a thing of beauty, a thing well made and well cared for. And we are proud of it, and will be, until the day we die.
If the family ties in your home are uncertain and giving way, family worship will help to strengthen them. Worship in the church of your choice and have daily devotions in the home. The church and the home are the basic rocks upon which the moral structure of this nation is built. They should be and must be one united foundation. Ask your pastor for devotional helps or send a postcard to The Upper Room, Nashville, Tennessee. Your announcer, Russell Thorson.
This is Chesterton Radio, the true, good, and beautiful at chestertonradio.com.
The Upper Room presents So You Want to Stay Married. Today's episode in this study of family life in the modern home is Romantic Love versus Marital Love, especially written and produced for The Upper Room by Carlton E. Morse, featuring Jeanette Nolan as Mary, Francis X. Bushman as the minister, and Thomas Collins as Howard. This is the story of Howard Andrews and Mary Andrews, his wife, and how they suddenly came to a stumbling block in their marriage.
Please, this is my story. My story and my wife's story. Do you mind?
No, of course not, Mr. Andrews.
Thank you. I'm Howard Andrews. Come here, Mary. This is my wife, Mary.
Yes, Mary Andrews.
You see, you can tell by her voice that she's a fine person. Normally a happy person. A splendid girl for a man to be married to.
Howard, that isn't the story.
But it is. It's the main part of the story. Because if you weren't a good wife, fine person, then the fact that we had marital difficulties would be so easily explained. But you are a nice person, and you said yourself that I'm not entirely an overboard.
Darling, you have wonderful qualities.
Well, there you are. Two normally intelligent, reasonable... What happened? We suddenly couldn't get along.
It was almost as though I woke up one morning and discovered nothing was right between Howard and me anymore. It's a terrible shock to suddenly realize your marriage is just about on the rocks. It shakes a girl clear down to her feet.
It does things to a man, too. Well, this particular morning, I walked away from the house to catch my bus to the office. I tried to figure out what was the matter, but I couldn't make head nor tails of it. I knew I loved Mary, and I felt pretty sure she still loved me. But I also knew that if we kept on the way we were going, we'd break up out of sheer misery. I guess Mary was standing over the breakfast dishes in the kitchen sink, feeling just as confused and unhappy.
I was. For the first time in the 10 months we've been married, it crept into my mind that maybe I'd made a mistake in marrying Howard. It made me guilty and ashamed, but there it was.
Exactly. Well, as I said, we had no one to turn to. That means, of course, that we had no church affiliations. Oh, like almost everyone else, both Mary and I had gone to church as children and young people, but we'd drifted away. I mentioned churches because as I walked along on my way to my bus, I passed one of our neighborhood churches and the front door was open. Without even quite knowing what I was doing or why, I walked inside.
Howard still doesn't know why he did it. He thinks it wasn't a natural thing for him to do because he hadn't been inside of a church for 7 or 8 years. But I know differently. It was his subconscious, his inner mind guiding him to a place where it knew from childhood experience that he could find comfort and a friendly helping hand.
Maybe Mary's answer is right. I still don't know. But I do know that a man came and sat down in the pew beside me and introduced himself. The pastor of the church. And the first thing I knew, I was pouring out my troubles in a flood of words. And before I left, he'd made me promise to bring Mary and come to his study in the back of the church on the following Sunday afternoon.
3 o'clock.
Yes, 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon.
Oh, come in. Come right in. I've been waiting for you.
Thank you. Dr. Hunt, this is my wife, Mary.
Mary. A beautiful name.
Thank you. Are we keeping you from a service?
Not at all. Our organist is preparing for the evening service and a wedding rehearsal to follow.
It's beautiful.
Won't you sit down and make yourselves comfortable?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Try to let the tension of everyday living slide away from you for a little. Forget everything else and just listen. It's a little hard to know just how to begin this little service which I want to perform this afternoon. It's rather new in my experience as well as in yours. As I've thought and studied your problems, it seems to me that perhaps you two are not familiar with the fundamental elements which hold a marriage together. Pitifully few young married people do know. And now I'm going to talk about a marriage tie which I believe affects you and your difficulties most intimately. It's the role of love in marriage. Romantic love is sweet and beautiful, and is the stuff dreams are made of. It is at its very height when a girl and boy know the least about each other. It's a pure, happy emotion, unencumbered, unhindered by truth or fact. In romantic love, a man is everything a girl thinks he is. A girl is idealized by her lover far beyond the perfection any woman has yet attained in reality. But that is the love given to a young couple when they stand before the altar and make their vows. How beautiful, how blissful, but how unstable. Because romantic love is untried love. It's the theory of love. Love that hasn't been put to the test. And when it is put to the test, and this is something young people just do not realize, when romantic love is put to the test, it melts away like mist in the sun. But it doesn't go without leaving something in its place. I should say it doesn't if there has been an honest effort on the part of the girl and the boy to unite their lives. As romantic love diminishes, conjugal love, enduring love, realistic love takes root and grows and grows and grows. And in a true marriage, that love is still flourishing and throwing out new tendrils of sympathy and understanding and affection and sweetness to the very end of life itself. And there, I think, is where your trouble lies. You two have been under a spell of enchantment. You gave your vows and have been living in the rosy, ecstatic glow of romantic love. Now, suddenly, the dream is ending. The illusion you have built about each other in the excitement of first love is fading. The scales are dropping from your eyes, and you are, for the very first time, seeing each other as you really are. And you've both been under terrible strain the last few months, because each of you has been trying to live up to the other's idealistic conception of the other instead of being yourself. Howard, all your life until you married Mary, the chances are that you were quite outspoken against anything of which you heartily disapproved. You couldn't possibly have lived with Mary a year and a half without having her do something of which you disapproved. And yet I don't suppose in all that time you said one word of disapproval, one word of dissent. Now, that's not good for a man. It builds up resentments and dissatisfaction within himself. And so, against your will, rebellions have set up within you. Mary, you probably have not once lost your temper since uniting your life with Howard. You have probably made desperate efforts never to let him see you any less beautiful than the day he proposed to you. Why, the strain has become almost unbearable. You can't relax. You can't enjoy a moment's peace because of your fear that you're going to spoil Howard's picture of you. Well, Mary, if you keep that up, you're not only going to wonder if your marriage is not a mistake, you're going to develop a violent dislike for him. Marriage is meant to be and should be a comfortable haven for two people. Both have to work at it, yes, but it should never require either the man or woman to strain or live unnaturally. And that's where realistic love is so much finer than romantic love in the end. You two haven't lost love. Not at all. Instead, you are merely changing your gay party dress of Saturday night for the more practical workaday clothes of Monday morning. Howard Andrews, will you stand up, please?
Yes.
Mary Andrews, will you rise and stand beside your husband?
Yes.
Howard and Mary, for the last few months there has been great turmoil in your lives, and especially in your spirits. The first murmuring of the thunder of discontent has sounded in your souls, and the first flicker of the lightning of rebellion has flashed there, and the first raindrops of the tears of disillusion have fallen on the desolation you were beginning to fear lay ahead. And now this afternoon, we are here to cleanse, to sweep out, to dust away all that is not good and true and wholesome, so that those things which were there are no longer there. The uncertain past is no more, and what is no more never was. Only the good survives. Therefore, Howard and Mary, I say unto you, this day you are made whole again, reunited. The romantic first love which first united you 10 months ago is today linked with the mature, realistic, marital love which is now yours, and your lives are again one continuous flow of joy at each other, from beginning to end, which is forever. May we have a word of prayer together? Our Father in heaven, look down upon these two children who for a moment felt strange to each other, and now for the first time begin to understand a little. May they know what is in each other's hearts, so that the nearness and dearness of this moment will stay with them forever. Amen.
Howard.
My dear.
Amen.
If family ties are uncertain and giving way, family worship will help to strengthen them. Worship in the church of your choice and have daily devotions in your home. The church and the home are the basic rocks upon which the moral structure of this nation is built. They should be and must be one united foundation. Ask your pastor for devotional helps or send a postcard to The Upper Room, Nashville, Tennessee. Your announcer, Russell Thorson.
You are listening to Chesterton Radio at chestertonradio.com.
The Upper Room presents So You Want to Stay Married. Today's episode in this study of family life in the modern home is Slings and Arrows of Outrageous Fortune, especially written and produced for The Upper Room by Carlton E. Morse, featuring Jeanette Nolan and John McIntyre. Where there is marriage, there is conflict. There are still many people who believe that to be a cynical statement. On the other hand, students of family relationship insist that if more young married people understood in the beginning that some conflict in marriage is normal and inevitable, there would be fewer divorces in the long run. Too many young people immediately decide they made a bad marriage when they discover they have wide differences of opinions, unlike tastes, habit, and personal peculiarities which don't coincide. They're frightened and disillusioned, but not David and Elizabeth.
Oh, for crying out loud, David, will you stop whistling between your teeth?
Was I?
You want to drive a person crazy? Why don't you stop it?
I guess it's a habit.
It's because you're bored with me.
Hey, darling.
I can tell. Your interests are all down at the office. The minute you come in the house and I start to talk to you, that bored look comes on your face and you start whistling under your breath.
That's not true, Elizabeth.
I think it is. And what's more, you're getting fond of that new little secretary.
Hey.
I wonder if you realize how often you bring her into the conversation.
Well, how do you like that? If I talked about the office and didn't bring her into the conversation, then you would have something to worry about. She's my secretary, isn't she?
You said yourself the other night that she's the prettiest secretary in the office.
Well, of course I did, but what's that got to do with you and me? Do I take her out to lunch? Do I come home late from the office because of her? Have I neglected you or held out any of the paycheck or done any one single thing that would indicate to you that I was interested in the girl beyond the fact that she's a good secretary?
David Gordon, you can't talk to me in that tone of voice.
Apparently I can't talk to you in any tone of voice that has any sense of reason in it.
Oh, so I'm unreasonable.
It looks like it.
You see? We never should have got married in the first place.
Oh, stop saying things like that.
David Gordon, stop shouting.
I'm not shouting.
You are shouting.
I'm not. I'm just tired from working all day and hungry and worried about the new contract I'm working on. And I think it's a fine thing when a husband has to come home from the office and start battling with his wife.
Well, maybe you'd rather come home to a house without a wife to upset your sensitive nerves. Why don't you answer? Would you? Well, all right. If that's how you want it. I still have a mother I can go home to. And I'd be glad to go.
Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, for the love of Mike, where's that booklet Elizabeth's mother gave us when we got married? It's around here someplace. Building Your Marriage. Building Your Marriage. Well, where? Oh, yeah, here it is. Now, where's that chapter on settling your differences? Yeah, here it is. Settling your differences. Boy, Elizabeth and I have used this part of the booklet so much it's worn to a frazzle.
Go away. I'm packing my suitcase.
I want to read you something.
I don't want to hear it. David, get out of this bedroom.
I want to read you something from Building Your Marriage.
I don't want to build my marriage. I don't want to have anything further to do with you or your name or your house or anything that reminds me what a mistake I made when I let you talk me into thinking you love me.
Elizabeth, that's silly.
Oh, so it's silly.
You know it is.
Mother will be very glad to hear that you think her daughter's a silly little fool.
I didn't say. Elizabeth, come out of the bathroom. Okay. Thank goodness for paper-thin walls in these modern apartments. At least you can still hear me.
Go away. I hate you.
It says here, most fights start from some trivial thing.
That just shows you how wrong that book can be.
It doesn't take much when one of the other person is all on edge.
I was not on edge. I've been just as happy as I can be all day until you came home and started looking bored and whistling through your teeth.
It says here, husband and wives lash out at each other, oftentimes because they feel safe enough with each other to use their relationship as a safety valve to release tensions that have been piling up.
Oh, so now I lash out at you.
No, I lashed out at you.
You did not.
Yes, I did. I shouldn't have gotten mad when you said I was interested in the secretary. It's so trivial, so wrong. It wasn't important, and yet I did get mad and lash out because I've been worried about the contract I'm working on down at the office.
Oh, don't be so noble.
I'm not.
You are, too. You know I started all this because I yelled at you about whistling under your breath and looking bored.
I wasn't bored. Honestly, I was worried about the contract. My mind kept going back to what I ought to do if I'd keep office work down at the office and pay more attention to you when I come home.
David Gordon, don't you say that. It's my job to know when you come home from the office tired and worried and make things comfortable for you.
You do make things comfortable.
I don't either. And I know you don't care about that secretary, and I know you care more about me than you do about the office. I know all these things, but I've been so burned up all day of that Mrs. Hazelton.
Well, the vice president's wife?
Yes, she called up and asked me to lunch, and then she said she was going to tell me something for my own good, and then she hit me with it.
What did she say?
She said I was too much of a home girl for my husband's good. If I was more of a social butterfly.
Well, what's she got to do with our lives? Who does she think she is?
Anyway, that's what got me going. I kept thinking what a failure I was.
But you're not.
And how I hadn't asked you for any new clothes in almost 2 years.
Oh, bless your heart.
And what a cute girl was in your office.
You want to know something about her?
What?
She's married to a great big bruiser of a taxicab driver. And he's so crazy about her, he brings her to work in the morning, meets her for lunch, and drives her home after work in the evening.
Is it crazy in love or crazy with jealousy?
Well, I don't know, but she likes it, whatever it is.
Oh, David, I'm so sorry.
And you're not going home to Mother?
I am not.
Well, I'm glad, because it says here, don't run home to Mama. The first thing to remember in dealing with such conflicts is not to run out on them. The wife who runs home to Mother and the man who seeks refuge at his club are settling nothing. At best, they're postponing the inevitable.
Well, I've got a mother, but you haven't got a club. You ought to have one.
So I'll have a club that I'm not supposed to run to?
Oh, come on out in the kitchen and bring the book.
Yeah, I'm starved.
All I have to do is take things up. It'll only be a minute.
You want to hear some more out of this book?
It's getting to be our Bible. Yes, what else does it say about family conflicts?
Well, here's a whole chapter on how to quarrel constructively.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. The author lists 8 good, solid ways to quarrel with wife or husband constructively.
Well, for goodness sakes, let's have them.
First, accept the fact of conflict without shame or pretending it isn't there. Remember that conflict is normal.
We do that.
Yeah, I guess we do at that.
If anybody had been listening to us 10 minutes ago, they'd know we don't go into silence to lick our wounds.
Number 2, try to find out what the whole thing means to your mate. What's eating him or her, and why? Try to keep calm as you can yourself while you encourage him to talk it all out.
It's a hard one to do.
Yeah, and I didn't do it a few minutes ago. If I'd found out about Mrs. Hazelton instead of letting you get my goat about the secretary.
You forgive me?
It's a pleasure.
What's number 3?
Number 3, ask yourself honestly, why are you annoyed or irritated? What does it actually matter?
I don't quite get that.
Well, it gives an illustration. For instance, Andrew found that he got riled whenever his wife set her mouth in a thin line because that habit was associated with a dominating aunt who made his life miserable as a boy.
Say, do I have any little personal traits that drive you crazy?
If you do, I'll dig them out and confront you with them. Do I?
Yes. You whistle under your breath.
Honestly, I don't even know I'm doing it. I'll fight it, but you'll have to help me.
And I'll promise not to go into a tantrum next time.
Number 4, don't let tensions pile up day after day. Work them out as they come along.
Well, I think we have a swell solution to that one. We never go to sleep at night until all trouble between us is solved.
It's getting to be a habit. I couldn't go to sleep angry with you.
Well, in some ways, maybe we're just as smart as the book. What's number 5?
If it's a serious conflict, try to agree on some next step toward solving it at once. Get busy on it together, fast.
I wonder what they mean by that. Oh!
Well,
Ouch!
Hey, did you burn yourself?
No, but I got some of that steam on my wrist.
Here, let me drain those potatoes for you.
Oh, thank you. Ah, swell. I can do it now. Oh, what was that about in case of serious conflict?
Do something about it at once.
Like what?
Well, maybe like the wife wants children and the husband doesn't.
Say, that could break up a marriage.
It wouldn't need to if they maybe went and talked to their family doctor about it or their religious advisor or something like that. Maybe the reason the husband didn't want children was because he had such a bad time as a child himself. Or some other reason that was a little mental block in his emotional life and which could be removed by someone who understands those problems.
But it has to be taken care of right away, huh?
Sure. Otherwise, the basic conflict over children could develop other resentments so that in time nobody could get to the bottom of the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And here's number 6. Help the other save face. Feel he hasn't humiliated himself. And that your love is there no matter what. Avoid sniping at each other. Try to keep your mind on the problem and not on the other's faults.
Uh-huh. I think we've learned that already.
I do, too. Number 7, be patient. Be willing to take a little time for solving difficulties. Don't expect miracles. And finally, number 8, when the whole situation gets beyond you, get some competent counseling help.
Oh, like your doctor or pastor, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Darling, let's make a promise. Let's not ever let our differences get so big we have to get outside help.
It's a deal. We'll make our slogan, cut your marital conflicts down in their youth, and they'll never grow up to bite you.
Oh, I love you.
My dear.
Hey, I forgot. My dinner's getting stone cold.
Oh, tragedy.
You're not kidding. More family quarrels result from husbands holding up dinner. Now, let's not get into that routine.
That's my wife who said that, and I love it.
If the family ties in your home are uncertain and giving way, family worship will help to strengthen them. Worship in the church of your choice and have daily devotions in the home. The church and the home are the basic rocks upon which the moral structure of this nation is built. They should be and must be one united foundation. Ask your pastor for devotional helps or send a postcard to The Upper Room, Nashville, Tennessee. Your announcer, Russell Thorson.
This is ChestertonRadio.com.